The great chamber of the Galactic Council had stood for 12,000 years. It was a monument to peace and cooperation among the stars. The chamber was built from white stone that came from a dead world, and its dome was made of crystal that let in the light of 3 suns. Species from across the known universe gathered beneath that dome, their forms as different as the worlds they came from. The Velthari were tall beings with skin that glowed soft blue. They had 3 joints in each limb and moved with a grace that humans found unsettling. The Kreth were insects the size of horses, with armored shells and mandibles that could cut through steel. The Mundari were made of living crystal, and they communicated through pulses of colored light. There were hundreds of other species, too, each one strange and wonderful in its own way. Ambassador Katie Morgan stood at the human delegation's platform. She wore a gray uniform with the blue eagle of the Human Federation on her chest. Her brown hair was pulled back tight, and her green eyes watched the chamber with careful attention. Beside her sat Commander Lucas Grant, a tall man with a soldier's bearing, and diplomatic aide Sophie Turner, a young woman who had graduated top of her class at the Federation Academy. The council speaker was a Velthari named Counselor Therex. He was old even by his species standards, and his glowing skin had faded to a pale shade of blue. He activated the central hologram, and a map of stars appeared in the middle of the chamber. "The matter before us today concerns the human colony on Varus Prime," Therex announced. His voice was carried by translation devices to every corner of the chamber, turning his words into languages that humans could not even hear. "The Dominion of Krath has laid ancestral claim to this system." Katie stepped forward to her speaking platform. She had practiced this speech 100 times. "With respect, Counselor, humanity established that colony 43 years ago. We found a dead world with poison air and frozen oceans. We terraformed it. We made it bloom. 300,000 humans call it home. They have built cities and farms and schools. Their children were born there." The Krath delegate rose from his platform across the chamber. His name was Overlord Vexton, and he was terrifying to look at. He stood 3 meters tall, covered in black armor that was part of his body. His eyes were red and without pupils, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like stones grinding together. "The Krath hunted in that system before your species learned to walk upright," Vexton said. "We marked it as ours 10,000 years ago. Your presence there is an insult to our heritage and our honor." Katie kept her voice calm. "Overlord, with respect, your people have not visited that system in 8,000 years. The markers you speak of had crumbled to dust long before we arrived. That changes nothing. What belongs to the Krath belongs to the Krath forever." Lucas leaned close to Katie and whispered, "They have been building forces along the border for 6 months. This is not about heritage or honor. This is about the minerals." Katie knew he was right. The Varus sector contained rare minerals called quantum crystals. These crystals were essential for faster-than-light travel. Whoever controlled the Varus sector controlled the future of space travel. The Krath wanted those resources, and they were using ancient claims as an excuse to take them. "We propose a compromise," Katie said to the council. "Joint mining rights with fair distribution of resources. Humanity keeps its colony. The Krath get access to the minerals they need. Everyone benefits." Vexton's mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among his kind. Humans do not negotiate. They delay while they breed and spread like vermin across the galaxy. In 200 years, you have colonized more worlds than the Krath conquered in 10,000. You are a plague, and plagues must be controlled. Several delegates murmured in agreement. Humanity had expanded faster than any species in galactic history. In just 2 centuries, they had gone from a single planet to an empire of 47 worlds. That expansion made many species nervous. They looked at humans and saw not explorers but invaders. Counselor Therex raised a hand for silence. "The council will take the matter under advisement. We shall reconvene in 3 cycles to deliver our judgment." The session ended, and delegates began to leave. The chamber filled with the sounds of 100 different languages, the clicking and whistling and rumbling of alien speech. Katie watched the Krath delegation leave through a side door. Vexen turned back and met her gaze. In his red eyes, she saw something that made her blood run cold. He was not worried about the council's decision. He already knew what he was going to do. Sophie pulled up data on her tablet. Ambassador, our intelligence reports are concerning. The Krath fleet is not waiting at the border anymore. They've already started moving toward Varus Prime. How many ships? Lucas asked. 400 confirmed? Possibly more. Katie felt a weight settle in her chest. 400 warships. The entire human fleet numbered less than 300, and those ships were spread across 47 worlds. They could not concentrate their forces in time. Contact Admiral Benjamin Cole on the carrier Resolute, Katie said quietly. Tell him to prepare evacuation protocols for Varus Prime. I want every transport we have ready to move civilians. Lucas frowned. You think it will come to that? The council might rule in our favor. Katie shook her head slowly. Look around this chamber, Lucas. Look at the delegates who would not meet my eyes during the session. The Mendari need Krath trade routes. The Velthri are afraid of Krath, military power. Half the council owes the Dominion favors or fears their anger. So they will sacrifice 300,000 humans to keep the peace. They will tell themselves it is a small price to pay. They will say that humans should not have colonized so aggressively. They will find reasons to make it our fault. Katie gathered her documents and prepared to leave. Get me a secure line to Secretary of Defense Maria Santos on Earth, and find out how many of our people on Varus Prime have military training. Sophie looked up from her tablet with concern in her eyes. Ambassador, are you planning to fight? Katie paused at the door of their platform. She thought about the colony on Varus Prime, about the children playing in parks and the farmers tending their fields. She thought about what it would mean to abandon them to the Krath, a species known for enslaving conquered populations. I am planning to be ready, she said. Whatever the council decides, I will not let our people face this alone. She walked out of the chamber and her aides followed. Behind them, the great dome of the Galactic Council glittered in the light of 3 suns. For 12,000 years, this place had maintained peace among the stars. But peace built on sacrifice was not really peace at all. It was just a different kind of war, fought with words and deals instead of weapons. Katie understood now that humanity had been fighting that war since the day they joined the council, and they had been losing without even knowing it. But that was about to change. 3 cycles passed in a blur of desperate activity. Katie slept only a few hours each night. She spent her days meeting with delegations from across the galaxy, trying to find support for the human position. Lucas and Sophie worked alongside her, gathering intelligence and preparing documents that proved humanity's legal right to Varus. At Prime. Katie met with the Mondari representative first. Shard of Morning was a being made of living crystal, and colors pulsed through its body as it spoke. The colors meant different things, emotions and subtleties that human translators could only partly understand. You must understand our position, Ambassador, Shard of Morning said. Its voice came from a device around its neck, translating the light pulses into human speech. The Krath control trade routes that are essential to our economy. Our people depend on those routes for food and medicine. And if the Krath decide they want your homeworld next, Katie asked, will you still value those trade routes? Colors rippled through the Mondorous form, shades of orange and purple that the translator could not interpret. We have treaties with the Dominion. They would not attack us. The humans of Varus Prime thought they had treaties too. They thought the Galactic Council would protect them. Shard of Morning was silent for a long moment. Then it said, I am sorry, Ambassador. Truly I am. But in galactic politics, the survival of millions often outweighs the fate of thousands. Surely humans understand this calculation. Katie thought of her grandfather, who had fought in Earth's last great war. He had told her stories about a time when nations made similar calculations, when they looked away while terrible things happened because getting involved was inconvenient or dangerous. We understand the calculation, Katie said. We just refuse to accept it. She had similar conversations with 17 other delegations. The smaller species were sympathetic. They knew what it was like to live in fear of larger powers, but sympathy did not translate into votes on the council floor. The major powers, the ones whose support actually mattered, remained committed to appeasement. The night before the judgment, Katie stood at the window of her embassy, looking out at the alien city. The buildings were shaped like spirals and crystals, nothing like the square towers of human architecture. 3 moons hung in the purple sky, casting shadows in different directions. Sophie entered with a cup of coffee. "You should try to sleep, Ambassador. Tomorrow will be diff." Echoed. Katie took the coffee, but did not drink it. "I keep thinking about Governor Walsh and the colonists on Varus Prime. Right now. They are going to bed in their homes, putting their children to sleep, making plans for tomorrow, and they do not know that tomorrow might not come. We warn them. The evacuation transports are standing by. It is not enough." Katie turned from the window. "Even if we evacuate everyone, where do they go? Those people built their lives on Varus Prime, their farms, their businesses, their communities. We cannot fit all of that onto transport ships." Sophie had no answer to that. There was no good answer. The next morning, the council chamber filled to capacity. Word had spread that today's session would be significant. Species that rarely attended had sent observers. The viewing galleries were packed with journalists and diplomats from worlds that had no stake in the matter, but wanted to witness history. Katie stood at the human platform with Lucas and Sophie beside her. She wore her best uniform, the one with all her medals and honors. If this was to be humanity's last day in the council, she wanted to look the part. Counselor Therax called the assembly to order. His glowing skin seemed dimmer than usual, and Katie wondered if he felt shame for what he was about to do. "The council has reviewed the claims of both the Krath Dominion and the Human Federation regarding the Varus sector," Therax announced. His voice echoed through the vast chamber. "After careful consideration of historical precedent and current circumstances, we have reached a decision." Katie held her breath. Around her, thousands of beings fell silent. "The council recognizes the ancestral claim of the Krath Dominion to the Varus system. Humanity is hereby ordered to evacuate all settlements on Varus Prime within 90 standard days. Failure to comply will result in sanctions and loss of council membership privileges." A roar of approval erupted from the Krath delegation. Vexton rose to his full height, his red eyes blazing with triumph. Across the chamber, delegates from smaller species watched the human platform with expressions of pity and relief. Pity for the humans who had lost. Relief that it was not their worlds being sacrificed today. Lucas gripped the railing so hard his knuckles turned white. They cannot do this. International law, treaties, the basic principles of justice. Galactic law, Sophie corrected him bitterly. And apparently it says whoever has the bigger fleet gets what they want. Katie raised her hand, requesting recognition to speak. Counselor Therax acknowledged her with visible reluctance. "Counselor, honored delegates," Katie began. Her voice was steady despite the fury building inside her. "The human delegation acknowledges the council's decision." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the chamber. Many had expected protests, demands for appeal, perhaps even threats. But Katie's calm acceptance confused them. However, Katie continued, "I must inform this council that the Human Federation cannot and will not comply with this ruling." Silence fell like a hammer. Then Vexen rose from his platform, his mandibles clicking with rage. "You dare to defy the council? We do not defy it, Overlord. We simply recognize what this council has become." Katie looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates who quickly looked away. This body was created 12,000 years ago to protect the weak from the strong. It was meant to ensure that civilization triumphed over conquest. Today, you have shown us that those principles mean nothing when powerful interests are threatened. Counselor Therax's skin flickered with agitation. "Ambassador Morgan, such accusations are unbecoming of a council member species. I urge you to reconsider your words." "I have considered them carefully, Counselor. I have thought about nothing else for 3 days." Katie straightened her spine and lifted her chin. "The Human Federation hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council effective immediately." The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted questions and protests. Several species tried to block the human delegation's exit, demanding explanations. Security forces moved to restore order. Katie walked toward the door, Lucas and Sophie falling into step behind her. She paused at the threshold and turned back to face the assembly one final time. "We will defend our people," she said, and her voice carried across the chaos. "On Varus Prime and everywhere else, with or without the sanction of this body, and when the Krath come for your worlds next, and they will, remember this moment. Remember that you chose to teach humanity that alliances and treaties mean nothing." She stepped through the door and did not look back. Behind her, the galaxy watched in stunned silence as the youngest member species abandoned. It's the institution that had governed interstellar relations for 12,000 years. Some felt fear. Others felt shame. A few, the small and the weak and the oppressed, felt something that might have been hope. The old order was crumbling, and no one knew what would rise from its ashes. News of humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council spread across the stars within hours. Every planet with a communication system heard the story. Journalists broadcast footage of Ambassador Morgan walking out of the chamber. Analysts debated what it meant. Some called it brave. Others called it foolish. Everyone agreed that the galaxy would never be the same. On Earth, Secretary of Defense Maria Santos addressed the United Human Federation in an emergency session. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from all 47 human worlds. Their faces showed fear and determination in equal measure. "The Council has abandoned us," Santos said. She was a small woman with gray hair and hard eyes. She had served in the military for 40 years before entering politics. "They have sided with the Krath because they are afraid." But humanity did not conquer the stars by being afraid. The representatives voted unanimously to support military action in defense of Varus Prime. It was the first time in 50 years that the Federation had achieved a unanimous vote on anything, on Varus Prime itself. Governor Timothy Walsh addressed his people from the steps of the Colonial Capitol building. The city of New Portland spread out behind him, 300,000 souls who had made this world their home. "I will not lie to you," Walsh said. "The Krath are coming. They have 400 warships, and they want our world. The council that was supposed to protect us has failed." A murmur of fear went through the crowd. Parents held their children close. Young people looked at each other with wide eyes. "But we are not alone," Walsh continued. "The Federation has not abandoned us. Admiral Cole and the carrier Resolute are taking position in orbit right now. Reinforcements are coming from every human colony. We will not go quietly into the night." He ordered the colonial defensive shields activated. These were massive energy barriers that could protect the main cities from orbital bombardment. They were not strong enough to stop a determined assault. They would buy time. Walsh also ordered weapons distributed to the civilian population. Every adult who could hold a rifle was given one. Training began immediately in parks and town squares across the colony, aboard the carrier Resolute. Admiral Benjamin Cole reviewed the tactical situation with his senior staff. The ship's conference room was filled with holographic displays showing fleet positions and enemy movements. The Krath fleet numbers approximately 400 warships. His tactical officer, Commander Diane Price, reported. She was young for her rank, only 32, but she had a brilliant mind for strategy. "We have 67 vessels currently in the sector. Another 40 are en route from nearby colonies. So we are outnumbered 4-1, Cole said. He was 60 years old, with a face weathered by 3 decades of space travel. He had fought pirates and rogue AI systems, and once a brief skirmish with a Mandaree patrol that had wandered into human space. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for this. 3.7-1, sir? But yes, essentially 4-1. What about the colony's defenses? Commander Price pulled up a new display. Ground-based plasma batteries can target ships in low orbit. We have a network of orbital mines and automated defense satellites. Governor Walsh is organizing civilian militias for ground defense. Enough to stop them? Enough to make any assault costly, sir. Not enough to stop a determined attack by a fleet this size. Cole nodded slowly. He had not expected good news. Then we make them pay for every kilometer. We fight a defensive battle, protect the evacuation transports, and hold until reinforcements arrive. Sir, even with reinforcements, we will still be heavily outnumbered. I know. Cole stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, the blue-green sphere of Varus Prime hung in the darkness of space. 300,000 humans lived on that world. Families, children, dreamers who had crossed the stars to build something new. But those are our people down there, Commander. We do not abandon our people. Meanwhile, Katie Morgan and her team had returned to Earth. They set up a command center in the Federation Defense Ministry, coordinating the response to the crisis. Information flowed in from across human space. Ship movements, supply shipments, volunteer enlistments. Every colony is sending what they can, Lucas reported. The problem is distance. Most of our fleet is scattered across 47 systems. Getting everyone to Varus Prime takes time we might not have. What about allies? Katie asked. Any response from the species we helped in the past? Sophie shook her head. The R'Lani sent a message of support, but they do not have any warships to spare. The Korvax are too afraid of Krath retaliation. The Mundari offered to mediate, which is their way of saying they will not get involved. So we stand alone. We have always stood alone, Ambassador. We just pretended otherwise. Katie received a communication from Admiral Cole. His face appeared on her screen, tired but determined. Ambassador, the Krath Advance Fleet has entered sensor range. They will reach Varus Prime in approximately 18 hours. Can you hold them, Admiral? Cole paused before answering. We can hurt them, ma'am. Hurt them badly. But stop them completely? Not without significant reinforcement. Reinforcement is coming. Every available ship in the Federation is heading your way. You just need to hold long enough for them to arrive. How long? Katie checked the fleet movement data on her screen. The numbers were not good. 42 hours at minimum. Probably longer. Another pause. That is a long time to hold against 400 ships. I know, Admiral. Do what you can. Make them bleed for every moment. After the call ended, Katie stood at the window of her office, looking out at the lights of Earth's capital city. Somewhere out there, beyond the atmosphere, beyond the moon, a fleet of human warships was preparing to fight a battle, so they could not win. She thought about what Shard of Morning had said about calculations, how the survival of millions outweighed the fate of thousands. It was logical in a cold and distant way. But humans had never been good at cold logic when it came to protecting their own. Ambassador? Sophie appeared at the door. Secretary Santos wants to see you. Something about a special operation. Katie turned from the window. What kind of operation? She would not say, but she seemed excited. Katie followed Sophie down the corridor to the secretary's office. Whatever Santos had planned, it was their best hope now. The fleet could not win this battle through force alone. They needed something unexpected. They needed a miracle. The Krath fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 400 warships bristling with weapons that had destroyed a dozen. Civilizations before humanity even achieved spaceflight. The ships were massive, built for intimidation as much as combat. Their black holes absorbed light, making them look like holes cut into the fabric of space. Overlord Vexton commanded from his flagship the Eternal Conquest. The bridge was filled with his officers, each one eager to prove themselves in battle. Vexton had waited centuries for this moment. The humans had insulted the Krath by settling on their ancestral territory. Now they would pay. The humans have formed a defensive perimeter around the planet, his sensor officer reported. 67 vessels, arranged in a layered formation around Varus Prime. 67 against 400. Vexton clicked his mandibles in amusement. They are brave. I will grant them that. Foolish, but brave. More human ships are arriving, Overlord. Our scouts report reinforcements coming from multiple directions. It does not matter. By the time their reinforcements arrive, the battle will be over. Vexton rose from his command throne. Signal the fleet to advance. We will crush their resistance and take what is rightfully ours. Show no mercy. Admiral Cole watched the approaching armada from the Resolute's bridge. The tactical display showed the enemy fleet as a wall of red dots, advancing slowly and methodically. They were in no hurry. They knew they had overwhelming force. All ships, this is Admiral Cole. His voice was broadcast to every vessel in the human fleet. The enemy is coming. They think we are weak because we are few. They think we will break because we are afraid. Today we show them what humanity is made of. Today, we teach them that some things are worth dying for. Commander Price stood at her tactical station, her fingers moving across holographic controls. All ships report ready, Admiral. Weapons charged and shields at full power. Weapons free on my command. The first exchange of fire lit up the space between the fleets. Human ships, smaller and faster than their Krath counterparts, darted through the enemy formation. They struck at vulnerable points, targeting engine systems and weapon arrays. Then retreated before the Krath could bring their heavy guns to bear. This was Wolfpack doctrine, developed specifically for scenarios where humanity faced numerically superior opponents. Small ships working together, coordinating their attacks, never staying in one place long enough to be destroyed. Destroyer Squadron Alpha reporting successful torpedo run, an officer announced. 3 Krath cruisers disabled. And enemy fighters launching from carriers, another voice called out. Estimate 8,000 craft. Cole gritted his teeth. 8,000 fighters against their own force of 2,000. The math was brutal. Deploy all interceptors. Have the orbital batteries focus on their carrier groups. If we can stop them from launching more fighters, we have a chance. The battle raged across the space around Varus Prime. Human ships fell, overwhelmed by sheer numbers, but each one took multiple enemies with it. Pilots flew suicide runs into Krath capital ships, detonating their reactors inside enemy hulls. Gunners stayed at their posts, even as their ships burned around them. On the planet's surface, civilians huddled in underground shelters. The sky above them burned with the light of distant explosions. Children cried for their parents. Parents prayed to gods they had almost forgotten. Governor. Walsh monitored the battle from his command bunker deep beneath New Portland. The holographic display showed the positions of friendly and enemy ships, constantly updating as vessels were destroyed or disabled. How long can they hold? Walsh asked his military advisor, Colonel Patricia Vance. Vance was a veteran of 3 colonial conflicts. She had seen combat before, but nothing like this. At this rate, hours at most. The Kraths are taking losses, but they can afford them. We cannot. Then we prepare for ground defense. Every able-bodied person gets a weapon. If they want this world, they will have to take it building by building, street by street. That will be a massacre. Governor, maybe, but it will be their massacre too. Spaced. The tide was turning against the human defenders. Too many ships had been lost. Too many crews had given their lives. The Resolute itself took a direct hit to its engine section, sending the massive carrier spinning out of control. Emergency systems kicked in, stabilizing the ship, but it was now drifting and vulnerable. Admiral Cole ordered evacuation of non-essential personnel. Get to the escape pods. Someone needs to survive to tell the story of what happened here. Commander Price looked up from her console. With respect, Admiral, I am staying. Cole wanted to argue, but there was no time. 3 Krath battleships were converging on their position, their weapons charging for the killing blow. Then the sensors went crazy. Multiple hyperspace signatures. The sensor officer shouted, his voice cracking with shock. Large fleet emerging at coordinates Delta 7. More Krath reinforcements would end this battle within minutes. They had fought so hard, lost so many, and now it would all be for nothing. But the ships that emerged from hyperspace were not Krath. 162. Human warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect attack formation. Leading them was the dreadnought Unbroken Will, the largest warship humanity had ever built. Behind the warships came hospital ships, supply vessels, and troop transports carrying 3 full divisions of ground forces. The fleet bore markings from every human colony in the Federation, ships from Mars and Luna and the outer settlements, ships from industrial worlds and agricultural worlds and scientific outposts. They had come from everywhere, stripping their own defenses bare to answer the call. Admiral Cole stared at the display in disbelief. Then he began to laugh. "All ships, this is Admiral Cole. Reinforcements have arrived. Let us show these bastards how humanity fights." The Krath, suddenly finding themselves outnumbered, began to falter. Their formations broke as human ships punched through their lines. Vexton screamed orders at his captains, but panic was spreading through his fleet. They had expected an easy victory. Instead, they found themselves in a trap. The battle turned into a rout. Human ships hunted down fleeing Krath vessels with merciless efficiency. The Eternal Conquest, Vexton's flagship, was disabled by coordinated strikes that left it drifting helplessly. Vexton himself was captured alive, dragged from his command, thrown by human marines. By the time the sun rose over New Portland, the Krath fleet was destroyed. Wreckage filled the space around Varus Prime, a graveyard of ships and dreams. The cost had been terrible. Thousands of human sailors had given their lives. But the colony was saved. On the ground, Governor Walsh emerged from his bunker to address his people. His voice was hoarse with emotion. "We held the line," he said. "Our defenders gave everything, and help came. Humanity came. Today we stand not as colonists, but as citizens of something greater than any of us." The crowd cheered, tears streaming down their faces. They had survived. Against all odds, they had survived, and the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The Battle of Varus Prime changed everything. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire, carried by traders and diplomats and journalists to every corner of known space. The Krath Dominion, one of the most feared military powers in the galaxy, had been crushed by a species that had only been traveling among the stars for 2 centuries. Overlord Vexton was brought to Earth in chains. He stood before the Human Federation tribunal, stripped of his armor and his pride. The being who had once boasted about sweeping humanity aside, like vermin, now refused to meet the eyes of his captors. Ambassador Katie Morgan was present at the tribunal. She watched as Vexton was sentenced to life imprisonment for crimes against humanity. There was no satisfaction in her heart. Too many had died for satisfaction. After the tribunal, she met with Secretary Santos in her office. "The Krath Dominion is broken," Santos said. "Their remaining fleet has retreated to their core worlds. They will not threaten anyone for a long time." "What about the Council?" Katie asked. Santos smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The Council is in chaos. Half the members want to condemn us for destroying the Krath fleet. The other half want to offer us a seat on the High Council. Which half is winning? The ones who are afraid of us?" In the weeks that followed, the galaxy underwent a transformation. Species that had lived in fear of larger powers began reaching out to humanity. The Rolani, a peaceful race of traders who had been paying tribute to the Krath for centuries, asked for an alliance. The Korvax, a warrior species who respected strength above all else, proposed a mutual defense treaty. Even some former council members made private overtures. Shard of Mourning, the Mondari representative, sent a personal message to Katie. "I was wrong," the message said. "I told you that the survival of millions outweighs the fate of thousands. But I did not understand what you understood. Some principles cannot be weighed on a scale. Some things are beyond calculation." Katie kept the message. She did not reply. The Human Federation established a new organization called the Free Systems Alliance. Unlike the old council, this alliance was built on simple principles. Member species would defend each other against aggression. No member would be sacrificed to appease a bully. Strength would be used to protect the weak, not to dominate them. 47 species joined the alliance in its first year. Most were small civilizations that had lived in the shadow of larger powers. They had watched the Battle of Varus Prime and seen something they had never seen before. A species that was willing to die rather than abandon its own people. Admiral Cole, recovered from his injuries, was placed in command of the combined Alliance fleet. His flagship was the newly repaired Resolute, now upgraded with technology from a dozen different worlds. Commander Price became captain of her own ship, the destroyer Defiant. Governor Walsh was elected to represent Varus Prime in the new Alliance Parliament. He brought with him the perspective of someone who had faced extinction and survived, and Katie Morgan, the ambassador who had walked out of the council chamber and changed history, was appointed as the Alliance's first Secretary General. Her inauguration was held in a great hall on Earth, with representatives from all member species in attendance. The room was filled with beings of every shape and size. Some breathed oxygen, others methane or nitrogen. Some communicated through speech, others through light or scent. But they had all come for the same reason. Katie stood at the podium and looked out at the assembly. She thought about her grandfather, who had fought in Earth's last great war. He had told her that some things were worth fighting for. She finally understood what he meant. "We did not seek this role," she began. Her voice was carried by translation devices to every ear and mind in the room. Humanity wanted only to live among the stars in peace. We wanted to explore and build and grow. We wanted to be part of something larger than ourselves. She paused, remembering the delegates who had looked away when she asked for help, remembering the council's judgment and the march toward the chamber door. But when peace was denied, when our people were threatened, we learned something about ourselves. We learned that we would rather fight than submit. We learned that our bonds with each other are stronger than any force that would try to break them. In the audience, delegates from 100 different worlds listened. Some had been enemies once. Some had been afraid. Now they sat together, united by a shared belief in something better. The galaxy watched in fear as humans abandoned the council chamber. Katie continued, "Today I tell you that the fear was misplaced. We did not leave because we wanted war. We left because we refused to be complicit in injustice. We left because sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do." She looked at the representatives of the R'Lani and the Korvax and all the other species who had joined the Alliance. Species that had been conquered and oppressed and forgotten. Species that had never had anyone stand up for them. "Standing together with all of you, we will build something better. An alliance based on mutual respect and shared sacrifice. An alliance where the strong protect the weak, not prey upon them. An alliance that will last, not because people fear it, but because people believe in it." The chamber erupted in applause that transcended species and language. Beings who could not understand each other's speech understood each other's hearts. They had all been alone once. They were not alone anymore. After the ceremony, Katie stood at a window looking out at the stars. Lucas and Sophie found her there, as they always did. "Do you think it will last?" Sophie asked. "The Alliance, I mean?" Katie thought about the question. She thought about all the empires that had risen and fallen throughout galactic history. She thought about the challenges that lay ahead. The enemies that would test them, the internal divisions that would threaten to tear them apart. "I do not know," she admitted. "But I know this. The galaxy is different now than it was before the Battle of Varus Prime. Species that were afraid to hope now believe that things can change. Species that were alone now know that they do not have to be." She turned to face her friends. "That is worth something. Whatever happens next, that is worth something." Outside the window, ships from the Alliance fleet passed by in formation. Human ships flying alongside alien vessels, united in purpose and bound by shared sacrifice. They were heading out into the darkness between stars, carrying with them the promise of something new. The old order had crumbled. The great powers that had ruled through fear and force were watching from the shadows, uncertain and afraid. And in their place, something new was being born. It was imperfect. It was fragile. It might not survive the challenges to come, but it was hope. And for the first time in 12,000 years, that hope belonged to everyone.